It sounds like a cliche, but you go through a bit of a journey.
It does make you assess your life.
I took about 4 or 5 years actually to properly come to terms with it. So Vicky, let's talk about coming to terms with your diagnosis of Parkinson's. So when you were first diagnosed, how did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it was a real shock. And my mother had Parkinson's and my grandmother, and I've got a brother and sister who are 10 and 9 years older than me. So being the youngest in the family, I sort of assumed that, I mean, not that I want my brother and sister to have Parkinson's, but I sort of assumed that it would be them, but just because they're older, and I still thought Parkinson's is an elderly disease. I didn't really know about young onset, but because I am naturally a positive person, I was like, right, I've got this, there's nothing I can do about it. So I immediately wanted to get in touch with other people that had it and speak to them and find out about support groups, because I didn't think on my diagnosis I was provided with much information. I found lots of Facebook groups, I looked at YouTube, I set up my own Facebook group, I did lots of charity work, and that was so comforting to me.
You know, even if you're quite a solitary person, I think it's really important to connect with others and just share their experience. So I remember the first time I went to a support group, I felt quite depressed about it actually. I looked at people 10 years ahead of me and I thought, well, this is my future, you know, this isn't what I want to be. But over time you get used to it and you build up a network of friends and you build up a community. And what was interesting for me is it's a community not just for me with Parkinson's, but for my wife as well, a sort of a support group for her with the other wives and husbands. And I think that sort of human interaction is really important. I've certainly heard of people who go through relationship problems, and it can be very challenging. You know, people can get divorced and so on. So it's not great for everyone, but I think it's about being positive, coming to terms with it, and using the support network.
All of last year was investigating, finding out, asking questions, all the rest of it. This year has been much more living my life and not thinking about it as much and just getting on with my life, and it's there in the background, which for me is a much healthier way of living, whereas last year it was sort of in the forefront. It's really important to tell people, particularly if you're on medication, or to take them with you to your appointment when you see your neurologist, to know the side effects of some of the medication.
Yes, absolutely. I think medication is a whole big topic. We've recorded a couple of videos on that as well, actually.
Might be worth clicking the link above, actually, if you want to see some of the videos on medication.
Absolutely. For me, this is quite common with a lot of people I've spoken to. You go through, it sounds like a cliche, but you go through a bit of a journey. I think you have this initial feeling of shock and why me, and, you know, how am I going to live my life? And then I took about 4 or 5 years actually to properly come to terms with it and just come to a point of acceptance that there were certain things I couldn't do anymore. And the way to find happiness is to say, right, I've got this thing called Parkinson's. It stops me from doing X, Y, and Z. But what can I still do that I can still get enjoyment out of? And so I've done a number of things, including recording these videos, which I've really enjoyed doing because of my Parkinson's. And so it's about finding things that you still float your boat, if you like. And I think a lot of people go through that sort of trough and then come out at the other end.
Yeah, I totally agree. And in a weird way, I'd say it's almost been a good thing, because it does make you assess your life and go, well, I'm not, you know, I'm only here for a certain length of time, and actually I know it's a slowly progressing disease. So on the one hand, you know, my advice to people would say, you've got a long life ahead of you, you know, lots of fun, you're not going to deteriorate immediately, but at the same time you will. So we might have sort of 20 years of being active, maybe less, who knows, and so let's make the most of that.
That's right. So I took a number of holidays, my sort of things that I've been thinking about doing for a long time, but I never got around to doing. Yeah. So I did a driving holiday across some of the southern US and went to see the total eclipse in, I think it was 2017, which was an amazing experience, and probably things I wouldn't have done if I hadn't had a diagnosis of Parkinson's. It sort of sharpens your focus into getting more out of life. And I'm at the point now where I can't really do driving holidays anymore, but I'm really pleased that I've done a couple of driving holidays while I still could.
So rather than coasting, you know, through life, you took the bull by the horns and actually did some things that you've always wanted to do. And you're right, that may never have happened.
If you're interested in finding out more about Parkinson's, subscribe for a new video every Thursday.